Hello everybody, welcome to the Emerald Coast Science Center's Planetarium. We're going to do a cool little live stream for you, just because we know everybody's at home, and this is one of my favorite events that we can do. So whenever all this craziness is over, come check out the Emerald Coast Science Center, and come check out the Planetarium too, because Planetarium is super fun. It's a super fun family activity, or a solo activity. If you want to just come sit in the planetarium by yourself, that's fun too. So you'll have fun no matter what. So right now, if you look up in the sky, you'll see no stars out. So the only reason that is because the sun's shining, right? So the sun's light is so bright that it blocks all of our view, it obscures our view of all the stars. So what I can do is I can go ahead and turn it. That is not what I'm supposed to do. I can go ahead and turn that sun off. And you can see all this. So if you look, you can see all the stars. If you look up, you can see this white rainbow right here. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, so the white streak that's going across the stars, that would be the Milky Way. So the Milky Way is the galaxy we live in, right? So the Milky Way is a spiral galaxy, and we live in one of those single arms. And then you have the star over there, or the sun over there, right? And so what we can do is we can go ahead and show you where the planets are. So I have the planets right here. And let's go ahead and move to the sun so we can go ahead and see the sun for us. Alright. So this is the sun, right? And so if you look, you might be able to see some dark spots. Those are sunspots right there. Those are just cooler areas of the sun. The sun's giving us solar energy, right? It gives us a lot, gives us life. And we do apologize up at the top. It might look a little bit crinkled. Our ceiling's not high enough, so whenever the planetarium blows up, it gets to the top of the ceiling, and it might show a little bit of some wrinkles. So just bear with us. We'll still be able to see all the cool planets, so it'll be awesome anyway. But yeah, so the sun's a star, right? Who thinks the sun is a really big star, or maybe a medium star, or a small star? What do you think? Let us know. Feel free to comment on down. And also, if you can't hear me, if I'm not being loud enough, make sure to comment that also, just so we know, and we can fix that for y'all. So if you thought the star was a medium star, you'd be right. So there's actually a star called Antares that is 1,000 times bigger than our sun, which is crazy because our sun's really, really big. So the distance between the Earth and the sun is about 92.3 million miles, so it's really far away. And all the planets are rotating around the sun, right? We knew that. And so whenever the Earth rotates around the sun, it gives us 365 days, because that's how long it takes to rotate. And then the sun's surface can burn up to about 10,000 degrees. So that's pretty insane.
Someone said they're watching from Crestview right now.
Oh, nice. Nice. And so also, what you're looking at now is the time of day right now. So this is what would be out in the sky at this moment. And so what we can do, who knows what the first planet is? What is the first planet? Does anybody know? If you said Mercury, you'd be right. Alright, so let's go ahead and go into Mercury. I think I don't have Mercury. I just picked Mercury. There we go. Mercury. Let's zoom in on Mercury.
Someone else is watching from Baker right now.
Nice.
So.
Nice. Welcome, y'all. Glad y'all can make it. So I'm going to go ahead and move it along so we can get the full view, so it's not phased out. So right here is Mercury, right? Mercury's super cool. It's the fastest planet in our solar system. Mercury is named after the Roman messenger god, and in Greek mythology you might know him as Hermes. He was the guy with wings on his sandals, and they named him Mercury because he's so fast, right? Mercury goes around the sun super quick. If you look, you can see all those craters, all those big holes right there. And so that's just from all the objects in the sky that are hitting it. And Mercury is so close to the sun that it does not have any moons, doesn't have any rings. It doesn't even have an atmosphere. So it's so close to the sun that the sun's gravity is going to pull it in, pull all that in to where it can't have any of that, right? So we talked about how fast Mercury is. A year on Mercury is 88 Earth days. So it's like, okay, that's a decent amount, right? But then one day on Mercury is 176 Earth days. So one day on Mercury is longer than a year on Mercury, which is crazy to think about. It's kind of mind-boggling if you think about it, right? Mercury's pretty cool. Spins really fast around the sun, right? So it is a terrestrial planet. It's the smallest planet. And then, what do we have after Mercury? Does anybody know? Anybody know? So we can leave Mercury right here. Move on. What's after Mercury? You said Venus. You would be correct, right? So Mercury's the closest to the sun. Venus is the second closest. So you would think that Mercury would be the hottest because it's closest to the sun, right? Well, if you thought that, you would be wrong. Venus is the hottest planet, and I'm going through the phases right now just because, just so y'all can get a good glimpse of it. Oh wow, it's going far away. Hold on one second, I'm gonna bring it back. All right, let me see here. So y'all can probably see Venus a little bit better. So Venus is a super hot planet. Venus is the Roman god of beauty, right? And in Greek mythology, her name was Aphrodite. Venus is the brightest object in the sky. So Venus is also known, in the early civilizations, they called it the morning star, and they also called it the evening star, because early in the morning you can see Venus coming up, and then late at night you can also see it coming up. So back a long time ago, they thought it was actually two different stars, but then they found out that it kind of just has a cool rotation. It's got a retrograde rotation to where you're going to be able to see it twice, which is really cool. So it can get so hot on Venus, it can get up to 880 degrees, and that's really hot, right? We've actually sent some probes to Venus, but it's so hot, the atmosphere is so thick, and there's so much pressure built up that all of the machines that we send up there, they explode. So Russia has actually got us beat by about an hour. They sent the probe up there and it lasted about 2.5 hours, and then we sent one and it lasted about 1.5 hours. So it's super hot on Venus, which is fair, right? Because we named the hottest planet after the hottest goddess, which is pretty funny. But yeah, it's super hot up there. They have those greenhouse gases that are similar to the greenhouse gases we have on Earth, right? And so that's why a lot of scientists call Venus Earth's twin, or also Earth's future, because we want to make sure that we're keeping watch over the greenhouse gases on the Earth so it does not turn into Venus, right? So the atmosphere doesn't get super thick, build a lot of pressure, and trap that heat, right? And so some things we can do to do that is just reduce our emissions, right? We want to take care of the Earth, pick up after ourselves, just to make sure that we're not turning into Venus, right? So Venus is a terrestrial planet, even though it's got all those heavy gases. So it's a little bit farther from the sun, so that's giving it the opportunity to build an atmosphere, right? The gravitational pull is not as strong as it is over on Mercury, so that we're able to build an atmosphere on Venus, right? Which is pretty cool. You'll notice as the farther you get away from all the sun, so like all the planets, the farther you get away from the sun, the less gravitational pull it's going to have. So it's going to start building things like moons, rings, and then just real nice atmospheres for things to develop, right? So yeah, so the Russians sent the first mission to Venus in 1966, and Earth, the humans on the U.S. soil sent a mission too, but it did not do as well as the Russians. So we're kind of heard about that. We're always in a big competition with them, right? So yeah. What is after Venus? Does anybody know what's after Venus? can you see what's after Venus right now? So, what's after Venus is Earth, right? Where is Earth at? Does anybody know where the Earth is at? Well, in order to do that, we're going to hop on a rocket ship so that we can blast off, because we're sitting on Earth, right? We're on top of Earth. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop in our rocket ship, and 3, 2, 1, we are going to blast off. Nice. So you can see the Earth. It's kind of dark right now, but I can go ahead and make it spin a little bit, just so we can get a cool show of how the Earth spins, right? That's a little bit of a close-up. So the Earth got its name from not from Roman mythology, but from actually Norse mythology, right? So Earth got its name from Jorth, which means dirt. That's in Norse mythology. Jorth was actually the wife of Odin, and so if you know the son of Odin, who's the son of Odin? Does anybody know? I'm sure a lot of you know. He's got a nice strong hammer. If you thought of Thor, you'd be right. So Jorth is Thor's mother, which is really cool. It shows why Thor is super strong on top of the Earth, as well as in Asgard, right? So what's the special thing about Earth? You said all that water, you'd be right. We've got all that liquid water that helps us sustain life, allows for all those green vegetation that helps give us life, right? So Earth is really special. Earth is our home. We want to take care of Earth. And so what we can do is we can go off of the Earth. We'll show you the moon. I like talking about the moon because the moon is super cool. The moon is our natural satellite, right? So it's constantly... Go ahead and zoom in right there for you. Nice. That's a good one. So that's a good... picture of the moon right now. You can see how the stars are moving behind the moon, right? But then the moon is standing still, right? And you can start to see the shadows starting to go over top of the moon. I have it playing right now, so it's showing it in a little bit of a time. The time is multiplied a little bit, so it's going a little bit faster than time usually goes. So that's why the shadows kind of coming over a little bit faster. But all those craters, you can see all those craters on the moon. And if the moon wasn't there, where do you think those craters would go? So what causes craters, first off? So things like asteroids, meteors, right? When they make a big impact, they're going to cause craters. And so if the moon wasn't there, they would hit Earth, right? And then the Earth would not be how it is today. So the moon is kind of our shield, it's kind of our protector. It protects us from bad things coming, right? The same side of the moon's always facing the Earth. That's why the moon's not shifting that much, right? Yeah, so you got the dark side of the moon behind us. So they're actually, we've had the Apollo mission on the moon, right? We were actually going to send the Artemis mission on the moon. We were going to have the first women's team on the moon, which is really cool because we love equality, right? So they're going to be the first women's team on the moon soon in the Artemis mission. And that'll be really cool to be a part of, just to be in that timeline to where we can see cool stuff like that. But let's talk about the moon a little bit. If the moon was not there, the Earth would be spinning super fast, right? So if the moon wasn't there, the Earth would spin super fast and we'd only have 8 hours in a day, which does not sound fun because we'd only have enough time to go to school and then go back home, eat some dinner, maybe take an hour nap, and then go back to school, right? So we wouldn't want to do that. We like our 24-hour days, and we're happy that the moon's there because it slows down the spin of the Earth, giving us our 24-hour days, right? Yeah, the moon's super cool. So the moon goes in phases. That's how you can see right here. I'm going to actually increase it a little bit so you can see all the different phases of the moon. This is what the moon looks like when it changes phases. So that's super cool. They're actually wanting to build a kind of like a space station around the moon so that they can do some research. That way they can also research like all the solar system, right? And it'll be a lot easier to go from the moon to the rest of the planets instead of just going from the Earth to the other planets, because the Earth is constantly spinning, right? So if the Earth is constantly spinning, we're gonna have to figure out all that math to get to other planets, and it's a lot of difficult math. I know to leave the moon and go to Mars, it takes about 2 years every time, because you gotta wait for both the planets to line up a certain direction, and it's pretty complicated. But if we built a space station on the moon, we kind of use that as like a launching pad, right? So if the space station is by the moon, it can launch over to the moon and then launch from the moon to the other planets in the solar system. So that'll help us out a lot, make things a little bit easier for us, which is something that we like. We like easy things, right? We don't like things to be complicated. Yeah, so the moon controls a lot. It controls the tides of the ocean, right? It determines when some animals will come out. So like nocturnal species, they look at the moon and it determines when they come out. The moon has its own gravity. It's about 1/6 as strong as the Earth, right? So on the moon we'd be really, really light, but our mass would stay the same, right? We'd still have the same density. And so what we can do is we can leave the moon. Say bye to the moon, bye moon. I'm going to back out right here.
Someone said the moon is out right now. I just looked up and there it is.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and so whenever you're done with the planetarium, try and look around. Hold on 1 second. There's some technical difficulties. Alright, I'm gonna have to go back. So I'm gonna turn the sun off. Sorry again, got bright. Yeah, so after this, go out and look outside and see what all you can see. You'll probably be able to see Venus. Venus will be right by the moon. Yeah, so we can go ahead and go to our next planet. What is our next planet? After the Earth, what's after the Earth? Anybody know? Alright. Oh, all those planets are right beside each other. Let me break those up. Alright. So we are going to go to Mars. Mars is the next planet, right? Mars is my favorite planet. Just because it's so cool. The history behind Mars is really cool too. So Mars is named after the Roman god of war. In Greek mythology, his name is Ares, right? So if you look over, you can see Phobos. Phobos is one of the moons. Phobos was Ares' son, and it stands for fear, right, or phobia. And then we also have another moon that's by somewhere. I can kind of speed this up a little bit to where hopefully we can see Deimos. Nope, there's still Phobos. That's alright, let me zoom out so you can see it. Alright, there you go. So you can see Phobos and Deimos. Deimos meaning dread, he's the son of Ares, and Phobos meaning fear, phobia. He's also the son of Ares, right? So we can zoom in. Why do you think they named it after the god of war? Well, a long time ago, before they had telescopes, they were looking at Mars and they noticed it was red, right? And so they thought it was made out of blood. But that would be pretty weird if it was made out of blood. It is not made out of blood. It is made out of something that I will tell you now. So, it's real red, right? And so it is made out of iron. And what happens whenever iron meets water, so a long time ago we think Mars was covered in liquid water, but whenever iron touches water and mixes with water, it causes the iron to oxidize, right? And when that oxidizes, it turns into rust. If you've seen rust before, you might be able to see it on cars, some bikes, stuff like that. And so all that red is just a bunch of rust dust, right? Which is pretty cool. Let me go ahead and try and get you a cool view. All that black mass you can see, those are all big storm clouds, right? And so whenever there's a big storm cloud, and if you're underneath the black mass, it'd be so dark it would look like nighttime. So those clouds are really, really big. We actually had a rover on Mars, and whenever it was like a whole year that there was a big storm cloud that covered Mars. And for that whole year, our rover was not able to turn on because we had solar panels that powered it. And so it eventually went in shutdown mode, and it never turned on again. So we have a dead rover on Mars, unfortunately. But we've sent a bunch of things to Mars. We've sent Spirit, Opportunity, and Insight. Those are all the rovers that have been there. And then we've had some kind of probe satellites that have circled around Mars. We've had Mariner 9, which was kind of like a satellite that rotated around Mars. And it rotated around Mars for about 2 weeks, pretty much just taking pictures of Mars, right? And so it was taking all those pictures because we were trying to figure out what it looked like. And we found a lot of cool stuff. We found a huge valley called Mariner Valley. And it is the size of the United States. So you can think about the Grand Canyon. Think about the Grand Canyon, but United States size. So it's really huge. And then we also have Olympus Mons, which is a huge volcano. So there's a huge volcano, and there's a bunch of other volcanoes around it that's on Mars. I wish I could show you that right now. But also, something that's unique on Mars. I'm going to try and see if I can flip to show it. So right now I'm going through the weeks. So I have a button I can press that'll change the week, go by week. And so you can start to see this yellow, or not yellow, white end at the tip of Mars. Does anybody know what that is? Can everybody see that? Let me try to zoom in a little bit. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. So can anybody see that white mass right there over by the tip of Mars? Something that's really cool is those are polar ice caps. So it's pretty crazy. You think whenever you think of polar ice caps, you only think about our polar ice caps, right? But Mars has some as well. The only thing is that it is covered. It's dry ice, right? So our polar ice caps are made out of H2O. These are just carbon dioxide ice. So it's dry ice. So that's pretty cool. Whenever we get the boots on Mars, people on Mars, we want to sample the ice caps. We want to also see if there's liquid water trapped underneath it. Because if there was liquid water trapped underneath it, there might also be microbial life, right? So bacteria, stuff like that, which show the first signs of life, right? It's really cool. So yeah, all that red is just rust dust. If you took a shovel, you dug down, you would get a bunch of dust that was red from the rust. And then if you kept digging a little bit, you'd reach a black mantle, right? Or a black little crust, which is the iron, right? And so a long time ago, before we had telescopes, a lot of people, the big reason that we studied so much of Mars, I like talking about this, is because a long time ago we thought that Mars had alien life on it. And a lot of people were afraid of Mars. They were terrified. They thought that we would get invaded by aliens. But so they started studying Mars a little bit out of fear, right? Fear is a huge motivator in learning new things. And so they started learning more and more about Mars. Eventually they built better and better telescopes. And then they realized there was no alien life on Mars. So that's cool. Fear drove us to learn a lot about it, which is awesome because the moons stand for fear, right? Which is cool to think about. Yeah, so we can leave Mars. What is the next planet after Mars? Does anybody know? Anybody know what the next planet is? Anybody know? It's the biggest planet. Let me see if I can see it right now. I can't see it right now. Oh, there it is. So let me go ahead. This is the biggest planet. You said Jupiter. You'd be right. So you can see, let me back up. You see all these names right here, all these blue names. Those are all of the moons. Alright, so there are 79 moons on Jupiter. So the gravitational pull from the sun's not strong at all. It's got a real thick atmosphere. And then it's also got these moons. You can see the moons kind of going around. We got Europa, Ganymede, Io. Those are all really cool moons. And so, Jupiter is made out of mostly helium and hydrogen, right? Those are all the different gases that you can see. And so the way we study Jupiter is pretty much the force of the gases and how they move. And so if you look right, let me try and slow it down so you can see. So you can see this red spot right there. So if you look over towards the left side of Jupiter, you can see that great big red spot. It used to be double its size, right? So it used to be really big, but it's kind of shrunk. But it stayed in that same area. And it kind of baffles scientists who really want to know what is underneath it that's causing it to stay right there. But all that is a really big hurricane, right? So you can fit a lot in that one small size. I believe you can fit 4 Earths inside of that circle, that red spot. And then that shows just how big Jupiter is. So Jupiter is really cool because it kind of is a protector as well. You know how I talked about the moon blocks meteors from hitting the Earth, but Jupiter kind of acts like a slingshot. The gravity around Jupiter is really strong, so if anything ever got towards Jupiter, it would go around Jupiter and sling right off. It would kind of go around it and just shoot off, kind of in a cool direction. But the thing is, you can never estimate really where the things are going to go. So whatever direction they're coming in, they'll just shoot off in another direction, and that could honestly, if a meteor went around Jupiter and shot towards the Earth, that would not be good, right? But usually it causes it to shoot off in all sorts of other directions, which is what we care about. We don't want it to go anywhere near the Earth, right? So, in the 1600s, Galileo believed that the solar system was heliocentric and not geocentric, right? So they believed that everything rotated around the Earth and not the sun, right? So everyone believed it was geocentric and that we were the center of the universe and all of the other planets revolved around the sun. But later on we realized that that wasn't true, right? And so Jupiter has 4 rings. Saturn is the planet that's really known for the rings. Jupiter's got 4 rings, but the reason why you can't see them is because they're made out of primarily rock and dust, right? And so rock and dust do not reflect light that well, and so we're not going to be able to see those rings as well. But if we go over to Saturn, first off, let's talk about how Jupiter got his name. So Jupiter is the Roman god of the gods, right? He's Zeus in Greek mythology, right? He's the head honcho. He's the big dude. That's why they named him after that, because of how big Jupiter was, right? So they named him after the head honcho of the gods, just to show how big Jupiter was. And Jupiter's got 79 moons. And so we can go over to Saturn. Let's go to Saturn just so we can see all these nice rings. Saturn's rings are really nice. Let me try and find it. There we go. All right. So I'm going to go ahead. Okay. Nope. It's a little tricky with this controller. There we go, got it. All right. So you can see some of the moons. Saturn has 82 moons, so it beat Jupiter by a little bit, just by 3. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to readjust. Sorry, I got some technical difficulties. I accidentally pressed the button. So we're gonna go back. Sorry about that, but we can go back now, so we're all set up. All right, we're gonna go back to Saturn. Boom, there it is. All right, I'm gonna go to it. See all those moons? We beat Jupiter in moons with Saturn just by 3, right? But we're still discovering new moons all the time. Saturn's really cool. So Saturn's rings are made out of 99% water ice. That's why you're able to see them so well, right? So Saturn is the 2nd gas giant, and it's the least dense of all the planets, right? And so if you took a scoop of Saturn, put it in some water, it would float, which is crazy because all the other planets would sink. So just a little while ago, we actually thought Saturn only had 62 moons. But then in 2019, 20 more moons were discovered. So it shows you how we're constantly learning new stuff about space, right? About our solar system. In fact, something I wanted to talk about Jupiter before, but I forgot to mention, is that we discovered that Jupiter actually has 3 poles, so magnetic poles. If you think about Earth, we only have 2, right? We have the North Pole and the South Pole. But Jupiter has 3, which is crazy. It's mind-boggling. It made scientists have to think, right? So we're having to learn a whole bunch of new stuff about magnetic poles just because Jupiter has 3. It's got a north and a south, and it's got one that kind of shoots out to the side, which is crazy. Yeah. So we've had 4 spacecraft have visited Saturn. We've got Pioneer 11, Voyager 1 and 2, and then we have the Cassini missions. And whenever we had the Cassini mission going around Saturn, it went by Titan, and it got some water knocked onto it. Got some water knocked onto it, and whenever we looked at that water, we were able to discover some microbial life, which is crazy. So it shows that there is primitive life, organic compounds on one of the moons of Saturn. It's crazy to think we got life outside of Earth, right? That's what that means, which is super cool. Not a lot of people know that, which I love looking at new things and learning about new things. So, what is after Saturn? Anybody know? Anybody know? I can give you a cool little acronym so that you can memorize all of the planets and the order that they go in, right? So my very educated mother just served us noodles, right? That's the acronym for learning the order of the planets, right? Ma is Mercury, Very is Venus, educated is Earth, mother is Mars, just is Jupiter, served is Saturn, us is Uranus, and noodles is Neptune, right? So those are the 8 planets that we've got in our solar system. You might be asking, what about Pluto? Pluto is not a planet anymore. It is a dwarf planet, right? So Pluto kind of got knocked down, but it is the king of the dwarf planets, so don't feel too bad about it. We're learning some cool stuff about all the dwarf planets, Pluto. But let's go to the 7th planet. What is the 7th planet? Does anybody know? It's coming up. If you said Uranus, you would be right. So Uranus is behind me. I'll go ahead and go to it. Oh. Alright. Alright, I got it. I can zoom in on it. So we are at Uranus. You can see all the moons right here. Uranus is super cool. Like I said, it's the 7th planet. It was the first planet to be discovered by a telescope. It was discovered by William Herschel in 1781. So, whenever he discovered this, he wanted to name it George, after the King of England, right? After King George III. If we had a planet named George, I would probably be pretty disappointed, right? I would not like that at all. Uranus is a lot better name than George. George is kind of boring. No offense to anyone named George. It's a cool name, just not for a planet, right? So I would not want my planet to be named George. So Uranus has 27 moons. They're all named after British characters from British writers. So you can see Ophelia. I'm going to try and slow it down just a little bit. You can see Ophelia. You can see Bianca, Juliet, Portia. Romeo's not here. They don't have Romeo. Wherefore art thou, Romeo? So we don't have a moon named Romeo, but we have Juliet. So Juliet's still here. Uranus has that bluish color because of the mix of the colors in the atmosphere. So all made out of different gases. And since Uranus is so far from the sun, it's super cold, right? The surface temperature is negative 350 degrees. So it's really, really cold on Uranus. And it spins differently. So Uranus is unique because it spins differently. So a long time ago, planets usually spin like a top, right? Like a spinning top. But this one kind of somersaults. So a long time ago, we think that something hit Uranus and kind of knocked it off of its path and kind of caused it to start somersaulting instead of spinning like a top. So that's pretty interesting. You can see the rings right here. So there's some ice in those rings that give it the ability to reflect light a little bit better than Jupiter's, right? Jupiter's are made out of rock and dust, so you couldn't see them. Saturn's are made out of 99% water ice, so that's why you can see them so well. This one's kind of in between, right? So these rings are mostly made out of rock and dust, but not as much as Jupiter's, so that's why you're able to see them a little bit better. And then we can go on to Neptune. Let's go on to Neptune. Let's leave Uranus. And we can move to Neptune. Alright. Boom. Nice blue color. So, Neptune is named after the Roman god of the sea, right? And in Greek mythology, what's his name? His name is Poseidon. He's the god of the sea. They saw it was nice and blue, so they thought it was made out of water. What do you think it's made out of? It's not water. Neptune's made out of some pretty crazy stuff. So it's made out of mostly ammonia and sulfur. So ammonia is in cleaning supplies. It's got that strong smell that a lot of people are probably familiar to. But then sulfur. What is sulfur? What is sulfur? Sulfur is made by us. It's made by cows. It's made by a lot of things, living things. What do you think it is? If you think it's farts, you would be right. So Neptune is made out of ammonia and farts. So we got some clean farts from the cleaning supplies, and then the sulfur gives us the farts. And it's really cold. The winds are super, super quick on Neptune. And so the winds can blow up to be about 1,200 miles per hour. And that's just because it spins super, super quick. And it's super cold. It's negative 392 degrees. So that shows how cold it is. So you would not want to be on Neptune, right? Because you just get cold, windy farts in your face, and that would not be fun. I would not like it at all. But it's kind of funny just to think about what Neptune's made out of, right? So Neptune isn't visible to the naked eye. It was discovered in 1846 using mathematical predictions. So it's pretty crazy how they did that. They didn't use a telescope, right? We just had some mathematicians who were like, hey, we think something's over in this area. And so the astrologists were like, no, I don't believe you. And then they kind of figured out they were right later on, which is crazy because mathematicians found it, not any astrologists. So it's super cool. And so Neptune is our last gas planet. It's our last planet from the sun, right? And so we can go ahead, I'll go ahead and show you Pluto just so you can see what it looks like. But Pluto is not that special. It's super far from the sun, right? So it's going to be pretty dark. So we got Haumea, Makemake. Those are two dwarf planets. But we want to see the king of the dwarf planets, right? So let's go. We want Pluto. We want Pluto. Give us Pluto. Alright, here's Pluto. Nope, that's Jupiter. Sorry, the controls are a little crazy on this, so I gotta make sure I get it right. There we go. Got it. So if you look at Pluto, you can see it's got some moons right there. You got Styx, Hydra, Cerberus. Alright, that's Pluto. It's really dark, right? So Pluto is named after the Roman god of the underworld. And in Greek mythology, his name is Hades. It's got 5 moons like we saw earlier. Let me back up a little bit so you can see those moons. So the moons are Charon, Nix, Styx, Cerberus, and Hydra. You might know those names. They might be familiar to you because of Greek mythology. And y'all can't even see Pluto that well because it's so dark, right? It's so far from the sun that you can't even see it. But Pluto's really cool. So y'all are probably wondering why Pluto is not a planet, right? You're wondering why it's a dwarf planet. And so there's one reason primarily why Pluto is not a dwarf planet, or why Pluto is not a planet and why it is a dwarf planet, excuse me. So for planets to be planets, they have to go through some criteria. You gotta be spherical in shape, right? So Pluto is spherical, right? It's a planet, it's spherical, so it's got that down. They have to orbit the sun, right? They have to revolve around the sun, which it does, right? And then they have to be able to be contained in a certain bubble. So they have to be able to have their own field of motion, or field of their range. Pluto does not do this. So what I'm saying is, so Neptune goes around the sun, right? And Pluto goes around the sun also, but Pluto actually gets in Neptune's orbit. And because Pluto gets in Neptune's orbit around the sun, it is not considered a planet, but a dwarf planet, just because it doesn't have its own bubble, and it kind of gets in the way of others, right? And so that's Pluto. Pluto's kind of disappointing just a little bit, just because it's so dark you can't really see anything, which is upsetting, but that's okay. You got all this other cool stuff to look at. I like looking at the Milky Way a lot. But let's go ahead, and something I can do is I can show you. I'll go ahead and turn off these planets, and I can show you the constellations. So there's a lot of constellations you can look up. I'm going to make it start rotating. There's a lot of constellations, and they can make up pictures, right? And so, hold on one second. There's 88 official constellations. We got some in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And so in the northern hemisphere, it consists of constellations named by the ancient Greeks and Romans, right? So we got Pegasus, Perseus, Hercules, Orion, and then some of these are connected by their myths, right? Orion is locked in an eternal battle with Scorpio. I can talk about that in a second. It's really cool to see. And whenever you get done with this planetarium, I encourage y'all to go outside and see if it's a nice clear sky out, and look at the stars, right? See if you can find some of these constellations. But if you use your imagination, you can see the pictures that go along with the constellations, right? So we got a lot of them right here. Let me go ahead and turn off that so you can just see the pictures and their names. All right, so we got Pegasus. We got a bunch. So I can go ahead and give you a cool story about some of these constellations. Okay, so let's see here. We can talk about Orion and Scorpio, right? So let's see if we can see Orion. Orion's right over there. You can see Orion was the best hunter. He was the best. He was killing lots of animals, and he was so proud of himself that he was saying that he could kill any animal on the planet that he was going to, right? Mother Nature did not like this. So Mother Nature sent an animal that's super strong. She sent it's super deadly, right? And if you watch, so whenever I cause Orion to go down, Scorpio will come up on the opposite side, right behind me. And so they're in a constant battle now. But before they were up in the stars, they were on Earth, right? And they were battling. And the Scorpius killed Orion, right? So the Scorpius killed Orion, and Zeus was like, okay. He threw them up into the stars, Scorpius and Orion. and they have a constant battle with each other. As soon as Orion goes down, as soon as Orion sets, Scorpius will come up, and then as soon as Scorpius goes down, Orion will come up. Orion's just so afraid of Scorpius that he doesn't want to be inside each other, right? So he's always going to come up whenever Scorpius is leaving. Another cool little story I can talk about is you can see all right there at the top, you see Cetus. Cetus is a really big sea monster, right? And so let's talk about over on the opposite side, you can see Cetus, the upside down dude in the blue, and you can see Cassiopeia. So they were king and queens of a land back a long time ago, and they had a daughter named Andromeda. Andromeda is the lady that's chained up. And they thought Andromeda was the most beautiful in all the lands, more beautiful than all the nymphs in the sea. And Poseidon did not like that. He did not like them bragging, being boastful, right? He was like, you should be humble. And because they weren't, he sent Cetus after them. And he said the only way for you to be able to live, for Cetus to stop fighting you, is to sacrifice Andromeda. So what they did is they chained Andromeda to the rocks, and they left her for Cetus to kill, right? Cetus was going to go after her. But lo and behold, let me go rotate it so you can see it a little bit better. A little bit more. Looking for Perseus. Trying to find Perseus. Where is Perseus? Oh, there he is. Okay. So Perseus is right under Andromeda. So lo and behold, Perseus came riding Pegasus. So Perseus was the guy who slayed Medusa. If you know Medusa, Medusa was a crazy lady. She had snakes as hair, and she could turn people to stone, right? She was evil. And so Perseus slayed Medusa, kept her head, because he realized when people looked into her eyes, they turned to stone, and that's a really great weapon to use. So he kept the head of Medusa. He was flying on Pegasus, and whenever he went to save Andromeda, he pulled up as Cetus was about to get Andromeda, and he made Cetus stare into Medusa's eyes. And whenever that happened, Cetus turned into stone and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. So Cetus turned to stone, saved Andromeda. Pegasus swooped up Andromeda, took him up into the stars, so Perseus and Andromeda could live together happily ever after in the stars eternally, right? So that's pretty cool. Perseus saved Andromeda from the big sea monster. And then one last story I can talk about is Hercules and Leo. Hercules and Leo. So we see Leo behind me right here. Leo was a lion that was terrorizing all sorts of people. He was a strong lion, right? So he was a lion that could not be killed by fire or sword. And so they were being taken out by this lion that could not be killed, right? This lion was super strong, and they needed somebody to take it out. And so here comes Hercules. Hercules is right behind me. See him fight the snakes. But Hercules realized that he had to fight this lion. So he goes to start fighting the lion, and he realizes that a sword or fire can't kill him either. And so what does Hercules do? He throws down his sword, and he looks at the lion, he's like, alright lion, it's you and me. Mano a mano, right? We're gonna wrestle. And so he starts wrestling the lion. He eventually starts to strangle the lion, and he kills it. He kills the lion by wrestling it. So it shows just how strong Hercules was. And Zeus thought that this victory was such a triumphant victory that he wanted it to be remembered forever. So he threw up Leo the lion into the stars, and he threw Hercules up into the stars too, so that they could be remembered forever. But Hercules was able to take the hide of the lion. So he was able to take the lion pelt, and he was able to protect himself from fire and sword after that because of that lion pelt, right? So he became stronger after that battle, which is really cool, because after each battle you get stronger, right? Win or lose. Yeah. these are the constellations. I encourage y'all to go outside after this, see what you can see outside. And let me go back, exit out these pictures just so you can see the constellations right here. So let me go. I will go right over. First off, if you look, you might not be able to hear me that well. I'm sorry if you can. So we have Ursa Minor right here, and we have Ursa Major right here. And if I go to the pictures, you can see there are some bears, right? This is the mama bear, and this is the baby bear. So whenever I go to rotate, whenever I go to press start and have the rotate zone, you'll notice how the tip of Ursa Minor is staying in one place, right? Then we have the mama bear protecting the baby bear going around it. What star do you think that is? So we've got that star that's staying in place, right? Ursa Minor. You can tell that's the Little Dipper right here, right? And then Ursa Major is the Big Dipper. I'll show you that whenever it comes back around. Well, what star do you think is the tip of the Little Dipper? If you thought it was the North Star, you'd be right. So the North is right here, right? So you can see the North Star right there staying in one place. And then we got Ursa Major, this Big Bear, and this is the Big Dipper, right? So the Big Dipper is not a constellation, it's an asterism. And so it's just a part of the constellation. So whenever you see the Big Dipper, you're looking at something that's a lot bigger than just the Big Dipper. And then we have, I'll talk about one more, not really the story, but just kind of what you can see whenever you look outside. I can always see this constellation whenever I go outside, every single time, and that is Orion. So Orion is right here at the very top. I can go ahead and show you the picture. So you've heard of Orion's belt, right? It's the 3 stars. Let me take away the picture so you can see better. The 3 stars that line up along the belt line. You can see it's got some stars where his kilt is, right where his little dress thing is. That is where his sword would be. So if I go back, you can see his sword right there. And what those stars are is actually nebula of gases, stuff like that, which is really cool. That's why it's so bright and hazy. But you can always see Orion whenever you're looking out into the sky. And I encourage you to go do that after this, right? So that is pretty much all we have for the planetarium today. After all this craziness is over, y'all, I really encourage y'all to come to the Emerald Coast Science Center. Check out the planetarium for yourself, and even just check out the Science Center, really. The Science Center is awesome. It's a great place for families, or if you just want to come by yourself, you got a couple hours to kill, just something to do. There's a lot you can learn. There's a lot you can see that's really cool. Got some cool animals. But yeah, I hope you'll have a great night, and again, go outside and look at the stars. They're really awesome. Hopefully the sky is pretty clear right now to where you can see it. But I hope you all have a great evening.